and welcome to the Cowboy Chronicles, the Oklahoman's Oklahoma State football podcast. I'm your host, Scott Wright. This week joined by McClain Baxley. 247 Sports, GoPokes.com. What do you prefer? I should have asked you that before I started recording.
Yeah, GoPokes.com and 24 part of the 247 Sports Network.
Yeah, and repping the gear, that's very nice.
You know, I got a shirt this summer to be official. You got to wait about a year to get indoctrinated, and then they give you a T-shirt.
Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. I got to talk to the Oklahoman. I'm at 19 years, still no shirt.
Gotcha.
Anyway, different subject. All right, well, we're back at Stone Cloud. McClain's sitting in this week. We appreciate that very much. We're going to talk a little bit about Tulsa, a little bit about the Utah game coming up, all those things. But as always, we start first with what you're drinking. You're getting to join me for the first time, McClain. What'd you go with in your first time?
Yeah, this is my first time at Stone Cloud. Got the watermelon party
shirt. Yes.
It's sour. It's got a
long
nice little sour. Tastes good. It's a little fruity, still a little alcohol-y, and good stuff. For
it is
very hot Stillwater. It's September. It's mid-September. And I walked out of the stadium and it's 90-something degrees and just hits you.
Hot. Yes, it absolutely is. It's crazy hot. Crazy hot in Tulsa. We'll have to talk about that a little bit too. I went with Matek Your Neck, which is the same one I had last week. I don't double up very often. I try to spread it out. They didn't have anything new this week, and there's another one that I was going to do, but I had got a 4-pack of it last week, so I figured I won't try it on air. I'll just save that one for home. So I'm enjoying this one again here. So cheers. And that is fantastic.
Yes.
Once again. So we'll get started here in a second. We're going to remind everyone watching on YouTube, jump down into the comments, leave your prediction on the score for the Oklahoma State-Utah game. Last week's winner was, he had a very long name on YouTube. We'll call him Mo. He predicted Oklahoma State winning 52-10, which only if they'd managed one more touchdown. If Bowman hadn't thrown that pick, they go down and score one more time, he might have nailed it. So nice job, Mo. This beer's for you. I will enjoy drinking that. And if you win next week, we'll also drink a beer for you here on the show. So with that, McClain, let's briefly touch on the Tulsa game because there wasn't a ton of crazy excitement. It was an oddly boring kind of atmosphere, wasn't it? Did it feel that way to you?
Weird atmosphere. Kind of felt like a scrimmage practice.
A little bit.
You know, most of the stadium was Oklahoma State fans. A lot of orange. I saw a picture of Tulsa, promoting their sellout crowd, and it was a lot of orange in that crowd, and it felt like, the offense wasn't giving too much away. It was the first time this season where they looked super competent for 4 quarters.
Right.
Not a lot of mistakes, not a lot of negative plays, and on defense, first game without Colin Oliver, and they held a Tulsa team that's not known. They're not the 2019 LSU team. They're a normal team, and they looked good for 4 quarters, and allowing a 4th quarter touchdown with the 2s and 3s. But yeah, overall just a pretty kind of forgettable game, especially with this week's schedule.
Yes, delightfully boring probably if you're an Oklahoma State fan after the first 2 weeks. A little less excitement of a close game was probably nice, but defensively, you talk about they take a shutout into the 4th. Tulsa didn't even have over 300 yards until the 4th when all the subs were in. After the first drive, though, I was starting to worry about what this defense was going to be able to do. They give up a couple of big plays. They end up holding the field goal, which Tulsa misses. But very impressive turnaround after the way that first drive looked, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes during this Brian Nardo era, he's waited till halftime to make those adjustments. I think they've looked a lot better in the second half, especially last season in that 5-6 game win streak. But he did it pretty much in the first quarter. Like you said, they had a couple big drives. Or a couple big plays on that first drive, a couple big runs by their backup running back to kind of get down the field with ease. But then they held him to a thing. Nick Martin talked in postgame. Their mantra was like bend, don't break, and they did that multiple times during Saturday's game, multiple times during the season. Bending, don't break. Allowing a field goal instead of a touchdown, or allowing forcing a punt or a turnover on down. So it looked good that they were able to make those adjustments and really shut down the running game for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Big picture question, based on what we've seen from some of the offenses, and obviously nobody has played, outside of a couple of teams, played a Big 12 opponent yet, anybody else in this league. Can the defense survive this way long term? It just feels very tenuous.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds you of the 2000s Big 12, right? Where Oklahoma State and the rest of the conference was having to average 40, 50 points a game just because there was no defense being played. You're getting these 45 to 50 point shootouts. I don't know if Oklahoma. I don't know if Alan Bowman and Ollie Gordon can keep up with that for the remaining 9 games of the regular season. but they might have to. I mean, because this defense, especially the secondary, is struggling. And despite they've had an interception, I think, in every game now.
Right.
But there's still those big plays that were so damaging last year that kind of held Oklahoma State back. But they're still around this year.
Yeah, exactly. That's something. Obviously, we were all watching to see what difference was going to be made in the pass rush. Then you take Colin Oliver out of the mix. Now it's sort of starting again to watch and see what difference is going to be made in the pass rush. If they can find some pressure up there, maybe it takes some eases the pressure a little bit on the back end, but still some coverage concerns. One guy that popped a little bit for me, and I haven't gone back to watch the game again, which I'll try to do, but Kobe Hilton getting his first real chance. It felt like he was all over the place, and I went and looked at Pro Football Focus. He played 17 snaps.
Yeah.
It blew my mind to see he only played 17 snaps, but an impressive game for him finally get some action.
Yeah, he's a guy that they kind of went to the portal to get. DJ McKinney transferred out last year, really their only starter that left in the offseason, and they gave this guy that's played a lot of football, obviously, at the Group of 5 level, but he's played a lot of football and just had a lot of reps, and so it was interesting to see how they were going to use him this season with so many guys returning, and he, like you said, he balled out. I think he was their highest rated player on Pro Football Focus on defense Saturday. So getting him more adjusted into this defense and knowing that you have a viable option should Cam Smith or Cale Smith or any of the Smith family, or even if Corey Black gets hurt or has a bad game, you have a guy that you feel comfortable throwing out there and being able to take reps at this level.
Yeah. Like I said, he was all over the place. They only threw at him a couple of times and he made stops quickly. I was impressed. I'll be really curious to see how things go as he ramps up, how he gets more acclimated and gets some more action in that secondary. I think he could be an interesting difference maker if he comes along the way that they seem to think he might be able to. So we're 7 minutes into this thing here. We've got to get to the biggest question, the thing that I've been asked more than anything since Saturday at probably about, it was an 11 a.m. game. So by 11:30, I was already being asked this. What's going on with the run game? There's lots of ways to speculate around this, and I'm curious what everybody's opinion is. We hear what Mike Gundy says, and that he's not concerned, things like that. But what's your take on this run offense right now?
I think I've seen a lot of people, whether on social media or fellow people on the beat, talking about how they were around this same issue last year. They didn't have a big running game. Ollie Gordon did not have an All-American start to the season last year,
right.
But he only had 19 carries in those first 3 games. He had 17 carries against Tulsa for 42 yards. He's had, I think 60-something carries through these first 3 games. So it's not like he's not. Last year he wasn't getting the touches, which is why he wasn't getting the yards. This year he's getting the touches, but the production's just not there. I think it's 3.2 yards per carry through 3 games. And obviously, Ceci Valhali, the sophomore, is doing a pretty good job as a backup. We saw Trent Howland for the first time really Saturday in that 4th quarter against Tulsa. The transfer from Indiana. So there's guys behind Ollie. He's not having to do everything, but between all 3 of them, there's really not been a run game against a Group of 5 team that loaded the box, against a big physical SEC team, and then a Group of 5 team or a FCS team that has national championship talent on it. So against 3 different opponents, they've really not been able to get into a rhythm. And I'm curious. I've also seen people saying that they're kind of holding things back and waiting for Big 12 play.
Right.
But I don't know if that's accurate because it's not. Last year you could make that argument because they weren't giving the ball to Ollie.
Right.
This year they're giving the ball to Ollie, but he's not working out. And so I don't know what big change you're hoping for to see against Utah and against Kansas State, and as the season goes on. But I mean, it's bleak for the running game right now.
Yeah, it is. It's a really weird thing to see because of what they did last year. Even after teams started loading the box, they were still productive down the stretch. There are times that Ollie almost looks a little hesitant when he gets to the line, and that could be the fact that he's running into a brick wall every time he gets the ball. We're seeing defenses. I mean, Tulsa never backed out of loading the box. I think Gundy said it 4 times. I don't watch that closely, but I know that every time that they were throwing the ball, I looked and there was one guy covering whoever he was throwing to. A lot of one-on-one situations for receivers, which is great for Alan Bowman and the receivers, but long term, they're going to figure something out in the run game. Maybe it is that they've been very basic in what they're doing, very vanilla, and they've got some other stuff. Obviously they've got some other stuff. They always do, but I don't know what exactly the answer is going to be with this group to really get things clicked in, because they're going to see a loaded box every game for the majority of the game, and people are going to hand the ball to Alan Bowman and tell him to go beat you. That's how it's going to work, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Utah is going to load the box. K-State's going to load the box, but the difference is Utah has better corners and better safeties and better schemes that Alan Bowman's not going to be able to throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns every game.
Right.
Even if you do get Gordon going, I mean, that's just not going to be a viable option, because they're going to have better athletes and better schemes than a Tulsa. So I mean, that's something they've got to figure that out, whether that's this week against Utah or during the bye week in a couple weeks. But I mean, it's something that's Mike Gundy says he's not concerned, and you can take that at face value maybe, but I'm sure that a lot of Oklahoma State fans are concerned, seeing that they're preseason Heisman hopeful and preseason All-American has 5 touchdowns in 3 games and averaging 3.2 yards a carry. That's not ideal if you're the Pokes.
Exactly, definitely reason for concern. We'll looking at Utah, we talked about the fact that they're going to load the box. I think they're a really good run defense. Statistically, it looks that way, and they've traditionally kind of been that under Kyle Winningham. That's sort of one of the things that they do really well. Mike Gundy said basically at least 90% of the time they're going to have an extra guy in the box, and then play the one deep safety, which could be something that comes down to Alan Bowman's veteran nature and ability to read that guy and make sure that he's making the right plays. It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch it develop. How they're going to see so many different defensive looks. Sometimes it'll be like this, and it'll be what you expect, and then there are going to be times where I don't know that they expected a loaded box from Tulsa, but maybe not as long as you saw it for as frequently. So it's going to be very interesting to see how teams adjust to this and how they copycat what's been done before them, all those sorts of things. Last thing on Tulsa, I mentioned we were going to bring up the heat. The press box with the sun shining in was brutally hot. Post-game interviews with Gundy, I was worried that he needed a bottle of water or something before we continued. I thought he was dehydrated and about to pass out in front of us.
Yeah, but, I mean, you've obviously been around the beat longer than I have. This is my second year, but he looked so unwell.
Yeah.
He looked like he'd been on a bender for 5 days, and he was just now getting inside for the first time. He was sweaty, his tan was glistening, and he just looked unwell after a comfortable win.
Yeah.
I think you were talking about it earlier. We were in a similar situation last year in Iowa State, where they had just lost, their Big 12 opener, and things were still not looking great for them.
Right.
But even then, he was still more adamant and more upbeat.
Right.
He was answering every question, just draining, and we were in, I think, like a backup locker room or some kind of weird equipment room situation after having been in the 90-degree weather for 4 hours or whatever. But it was tough, that environment. You got affected more than I did. I was on the back row, and you kept coming back. I think every time out, you were coming back and just kind of recovering for the 2 or 3 minute TV timeout. But it was still my background is in Group of 5 covering Georgia Southern, and so I'm used to the small stadium, makeshift nature of it. But Saturday was definitely an experience.
Kind of a big picture question, just in general, because you've covered a variety of different teams. Been pretty much grew up in SEC country, right? So what has been your first year plus experience with Mike Gundy and everything that comes with covering a guy like him?
Yeah, he's been good because they've been winning, right? They've only lost, 4 games since I've been here. So, and won a lot, won 13 of them, and played for a Big 12 championship. I was worried last year. I got the job last May, and this was right after Oklahoma State's whole roster transferred out, and there was uncertainty about quarterback, there was uncertainty about this defense and new defensive coordinator, and everybody's calling for everybody's jobs, and they get there and they beat Kansas State, they beat Kansas, they beat OU in the last ever Bedlam game, which was super cool to be a part of, and so everything's been really good since I've been here. I hear all these horror stories of him with the media or him with players and just him in general, But yeah, he's been good. This covering Oklahoma State athletics has been good. The highs and lows of covering football, men's basketball, all the sports that I've gotten to know in the last year and a half. But it's been pleasurable. It's been a good experience.
Good deal. So you mentioned there are some horror stories. There's some difficult moments with Gundy. My experience in covering, I covered him for 1 year in 2008, then every year since 2017. The entertainment vastly outweighs the horror stories. We had a fun one today. The refrigerator, for lack of a better term, the pop machine that it's got sliding doors with all the water and Pepsi's in it for us. Apparently, something's about to go out in that thing. It was very loud, and Gunny just came over and helped us pull it out from the wall so we could unplug it.
He was mid-question.
He was.
One of our fellow guys, he was asking a question. He's answering, and you can tell his attention is elsewhere.
Yes.
And so until that was fixed, he was not going to be able to answer. We could ask him the most provocative or most simple or craziest question, and he was not going to answer that question until he got that thing fixed. And he went over, and there's videos of him going over and holding it while some SIDs and stuff unplug it and kind of kill the machine for a couple hours, and it definitely helped. And the press conference went on as usual. But yeah, I mean, every week there's something. Last week we had the Homer comment.
Right.
I mean, it's cool to be a part of these national headlines. And this during my time they've been mostly good, right?
Right.
He's talked about NIL. He's talked about transfer portal, the QR code and stuff. So it's been fun, but yeah, he's not one to avoid media. And coming from Kirby Smart, where that guy would, if he never had to do media, he'd be fine with it.
Right.
To hear has definitely been a change of scenery.
All right, good deal. Before we move on, anything else about this Utah game that really stands out to you, or that you're very curious to see? Yeah,
I mean, I guess part of it is just kind of the fourth quarter, especially. We got a kind of a glimpse of the future. We saw Garrett Rangel went in, Stessie and Hallen went in, and we a full offensive line change. Some of the Talon Shetron had a touchdown, and so we got to see a lot of youth in that fourth quarter, and that was really the first time since, because though Gundy's been positive the whole time, they've only had about 3 blowout games, and one of them they were on the losing end down at UCF last year. So Cincinnati last year, UCF last year, and then Saturday against Tulsa. So it was cool to see what next year's team could look like after they lose about 40 seniors this offseason. It feels like. So that's one takeaway. Obviously, we won't see them again until March, when fall training comes around probably. But yeah, I mean, that's just something to note, and some new names that we weren't used to seeing.
I'll preface this one by saying I don't think there's anything to this, and I'll go more into my answer later. But do you read anything into Garrett Rangel playing, Zane Flores not playing on Saturday? I
mean, it just kind of buys into the Gundy rewards veterans and rewards sticking around the program. Rangel's been here for 2-3 years now. He's played. He played as a true freshman when Sanders went down back in 2022. Played a little bit in that 3 quarterback experiment last year, whereas Flores has not played a game. And I'm curious, if the season goes on and they have more of these, comfortable leads like we're expecting them to have, will Flores ever see the field? Because I talked with him at OSU Media Day back in early August, and he was saying, I just want to play. Understanding that it was Alan Bowman's year, he's the veteran, he's the guy. And so that wasn't a question, but I think he just wants to see the field. Because if not, I mean, I don't know if they're looking at losing him. Obviously, Nebraska has Dylan Raiola now, so that's not really a concern that he'd go home. There's 139 other programs nationally now at this level, and he can get paid with NIL and everything. So I think it's something to watch for sure, and I think it was the right thing to play Garrett, but we're given 20 plays or whatever. But it's something to watch as the season goes on, what those reps look like in game.
Yeah, I agree with you that Gundy's going to play the veteran in that situation. It didn't surprise me at all. I thought Flores might get in late. Didn't happen. If they have another blowout, I think we'll probably see Flores ahead of Rangel. I don't think it means anything. You want both those guys here in spring. You want both those guys here next August. And I envision a quarterback battle that probably goes until about, as far as we know, publicly, about 8 hours before the season opener.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's answered at the season opener, or maybe he plays them both in the first 3 games. I don't know. I never thought he'd play 3 guys for 3 games, so I'm not gonna pretend to know what Gundy might try to do. But
I mean, actually, they open against I think UT Martin, so there's another much more easy FCS team than South Dakota State.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be an easier test for whether it's Rangel or Flores, or they go out and get a veteran transfer portal guy that has playing experience, has Power 5 experience. Who knows? We still have 10 plus games in this season, right?
Exactly. Listen, and I frequently I try not to do it too often because you don't want to just bag on a guy's health. But last year was the first time in Alamoman's career that he made it through more than 8 games in a season. So he does have some health concerns long term, although they're protecting him really well. That makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah. He has 0 sacks through 3 games.
Yeah.
They've allowed 0 sacks in the last 4 games going back to the Texas Bowl. So while the offensive line, we might talk about this as it goes on, but I mean, the offensive line is not, we talk about run blocking and everything being poor, but their pass production has been the best I've seen in the last 2 years.
And on top of that, Gundy talked about this today, but it's obviously evident when you watch, Bowman is staying in the pocket a lot longer too, which was something that he wasn't doing, whether it was throwing the ball away really quick, getting out and running, get out of the pocket, and getting himself in trouble that way. So it's really been impressive the way that they've pass blocked to this point in the season. All right, I think that means it's time for the Stone Cloud 6-pack. We will jump in here before just a little appetizer to the Stone Cloud 6-pack. This doesn't count as one of the 6. But would you say they give up the first sack this week? Does Utah get them?
No. I think that's really going to be their thing, is just the pass protecting, and Alabama being smart enough to get rid of the ball when he has to. He's done it a couple. He hasn't. Last year he was doing it often, throwing the ball way quicker than he needed to because he felt the pocket closing. But I think now he understands when to throw the ball away. He's had a full year and a half of being the guy, and so he trusts his linemen, he trusts his receivers. I think he's gonna. I don't think a sack's coming this week. I'm
with you. I think they're going to have. They're going to be able to handle this one. All right, we start the Stone Cloud 6-pack. That's last week's. I texted this to you.
Me, yeah.
I didn't type it in my notes, so now I got to stall here while I go find. Okay, there we go. Yeah, last week our over under on Ollie was 3.5 touchdowns. He did not get into.
He didn't score.
No, he did not at all. This week, I wonder if this yardage number is a little bit high, but it's the number that came to me, so we're going with it. Over or under on Ollie Gordon rushing yards, 84.5.
I think under.
Going under?
I think it's another game where we see the loaded box and see them make Alabama make throws.
Now, if I had said not rushing yards, but yards from scrimmage for Ollie Gordon, so we add in passing, you think he gets over 85?
Probably. I mean, that's one of the things that makes Gordon so versatile. And really him and Sessi being able to catch passes out of the backfield and just an added weapon. I mean, you can shut him down if he's directly turning around and handing the ball off going up the middle. But, I mean, being able to keep up with him out of this swing pass or even just down the field or a little slant, I mean, that's something that Oklahoma State's been so good at over the years, whether it's with running back or Presley or any of these other guys that can just kind of get across and get 4 or 5 yards, and then whatever happens after the catch, it kind of varies. But yeah, I can see total yardage being over 85.
Same. I'm going to go with you on both of those. Actually, I don't think he'll get to 85 rushing yards. Who will have the most receptions for Oklahoma State this week?
Is it a escape route to say Brendan Presley? I mean, he's been. When was the last game that he did? I mean, I think last week he didn't, but most games, Brendan Presley's going to get 8 or 9 receptions, it feels like, pretty easily. Mm-hmm. So I think he's now, after Saturday, he's, I think, 6 away from passing Justin Blackman for most receptions in program history. Mm-hmm. I think that happens on Saturday against Utah.
I agree. I'm actually going to go with Dejon Stribling on this one. I think because they're going to see some one-on-ones out there, and this defense is going to clog the middle a little bit more. I think it's going to make it a little tougher for them to get Presley as involved as they would like, and I think some of those little in routes that they like with Stribling and some of the crossing routes and things that they do, I think it's going to lead to a big day for him.
That's a takeaway we didn't really talk about from Tulsa. Is I think he's Biletnikoff candidate after that game.
He absolutely
174 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, I think going into the season, I thought all three, both him, Presley, and Rashad Owens, were all going to be candidates for all Big 12,
right.
And one of them was going to stick out. I think they were going to kind of split votes on who gets that national recognition.
Right.
Whereas Stribling, I think, on Saturday really showed his speed, showed his athleticism. He caught every ball that was targeted him. I think he went 7 for 7.
Yeah.
And
had another one that got wiped out by a penalty.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he's kind of the candidate. Quarter of the season in, I think he's their guy that's going to get national attention.
Yeah,
this season.
if they keep seeing defenses like they're seeing, which we expect that they will, I think he's got a chance to put up some really big numbers. I'll be curious to see. You mentioned that Presley is usually the guy that's going to have the bigger reception numbers, and are certainly on pace to do that right now and lead the team in that category. But I think Stribling's going to have a chance to push him at least a few times, but maybe not for the full season. But it'll be interesting to watch. All right, lastly, for this part of the Stone Cloud six-pack, we flip over to the defense. Who will have OSU's next interception? I find it fascinating. It's really hard when you play as much man as OSU does for corners to get interceptions. Got 3 picks, all by corners right now. You expect more from safeties who are watching and can react to things rather than a corner that's in coverage and not often looking at the quarterback. So I find it fascinating. But who do you think has the next interception?
I think Nick Martin.
That's a good one.
He's been so close
That's a
twice
good one.
this season against Arkansas, and then last week against Tulsa. I think if he was a better pass catcher or worked more with balls, that he would catch both of those and have 2 interceptions along with his 1,000 tackles 2 games in. So I'm going to go with Nick Martin. I think it's due. I think he had 2 last year. One of them was against K-State in the conference, or not the conference, home conference opener. So I think that happens against Utah is a interception for Nick Martin.
That's a good one. I really like that pick. That's got me thinking now. It's got me debating in my head. I'm going to go with a guy that we talked about earlier because I am really excited about what this guy's doing. I'm going to go with Kobe Hilton on this one. I think that guy's just going to continue to expand his role and find a good home in the OSU secondary, and I think that's going to lead to a pick. Not sure if it'll be this week, but I think he's next in line.
I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, is Kendall Daniels going to get a pick? I mean, in this new position, and especially with Colin Oliver now, he's Gundy has said, and we just kind of assume that he's going to be playing more on the line, more rushing the quarterback, and really being more of a true linebacker, true edge than a safety. I mean, is he going to go his perhaps final season with Oklahoma State without a pick, and still probably get drafted? I mean, that's definitely on the table.
It absolutely is, and he did have the one really nice play in pass coverage the other day, but got his head around and got his hand up late and knocked it down. But he's not going to have the frequent opportunities or those moments when he's kind of floating back, playing center field, and can react and go make a play the way that he has in the past. So, it'll be interesting to see if he can pull off another one. All right. So for the back half of the Stone Cloud six-pack, we move to the draft. As always, 3 rounds. I actually came up with this topic idea last week, right after the show, was when I found out that James Earl Jones had passed away. Marshall Scott from Pistols Firing was here with. We found out right after we finished recording, and I knew immediately that we would have to do this. And also, it worked out well because you seem to really enjoy movies. You'd be a bit of a movie guy, right?
Yeah, I'm a movie guy. I'm a Letterboxd user. McClain Baxley out there for all you heads. I mean, I enjoy a lot of movies. I'm an AMC Stubbs subscriber, and I'm also a theater and appreciator of good actors. And
nice.
James Earl Jones was definitely one of those. I think a lot of people remember him for the voice acting and the kind of the big blockbuster roles. We also did a lot of stage performances. Did a lot of kind of character actor roles, side characters and stuff. So just a very versatile guy that did a lot for the African American community. Did a lot for acting and everything, and so he's just a really well respected guy that it was time. He's 93, I believe, and so it's not like he suddenly passed away, but definitely someone that meant a lot for movies and film and the arts.
Absolutely, completely agree. All right, as always, the guest host gets to pick first in the draft. So it is to you, McClain, for pick number 1 in the James Earl Jones. And then let me set the rules. Anything basically that he's done is on the table, whether it's just a role, a movie that he was in that is a favorite of yours, whatever it is, it's all fair game. So fire away.
I mean, when I think James Earl Jones, I think of Darth Vader.
Absolutely.
I don't know which one you want to go with. I mean, I think maybe Empire Strikes Back. That's the one I watched last Tuesday when I had a day off and kind of watched some of his movies, and just an icon. I mean, one of, if not the biggest villain in film history.
Right.
I mean, a guy that you just hear his breathing, and you immediately know where you were. You can see the scene, you can see the lightsabers, you can see the Luke, I'm your father. Spoiler alert. But it was just such an iconic performance, and just Star Wars might not have happened had they not found that voice, because they hired another guy, and they this guy's voice is not strong enough, and so they had one man played the physical, and then James Earl Jones did the voice for 30 years, different movies and shows. So I'm going to go with Darth Vader.
I think it would have been a disservice to the podcast if we had selected anything other than that as the number one overall pick for this. So well done there.
Thank
you. You've filled your seat well. For number two, because that one is off the table, and I think it's a little bit more of more wide open for the number two role, the number two pick. I'm actually going to just stick with one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time, which is Field of Dreams, and he, of course, is in that movie and plays a very central role, and has is one of the ones that says the famous line, "They will come. If you build it, they will come." Yada yada yada. So that's I've loved it since 1989 when it came out. Baseball nerd, and so it was perfect for me, and he was great in it, and. One of my all-time favorite movie scenes is the moment when Kevin Costner, who I apologize to everyone for last week's draft, Kevin Costner should have been drafted. That was a huge mistake on me and Marshall's part. Anyway, Kevin Costner turns the van around because James Earl Jones told him he didn't see the vision on the scoreboard about Moonlight Graham, and he turns the van around, and there James Earl Jones is standing in the street. It's one of my favorite scenes of all time. So that's my pick with number one. Now to you to start off around number 2.
I'm going to stick with baseball. I'm going to go
Nice.
Sandlot.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm not as big of a baseball buff, but I am a child of America, and so I was, watched this film very early on in my childhood,
right.
And you don't see him until the end, and just the scene where I saw it on Twitter last week. The scene where they go into his house, after they find the ball, and James Earl Jones said, "Oh, is it autographed?" And Small says, "Yeah." And he says, "Oh, you're not dead. You're dead where you stand."
Right.
So, I mean,
yeah.
just an iconic performance, and the blind old man that becomes the one of the heroes of the movie, and
right.
just a great. He's having fun with it. He's later in his career, and he's just having a good time with a bunch of kids in a kids movie. Something they did so often. Where a lot of his roles were, children's performances.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that'll be my pick, is his performance from Sandlot.
Yeah, and there was a lot of stuff like that, not necessarily even with children, but other stuff that he did. Like you're like, oh, how's James Earl Jones in this thing? I'm not going to say any specifics right now, because I don't want to ruin your last pick. But there were some fun things that he did later in his career that just was very, very endearing, that made him even more entertaining than he was. I'm actually going to the other side of his career, which this was a movie that I saw just completely randomly one day, and it was probably like late 80s. It came on, my family had just gotten HBO. It just came on one day, and I watched it. Had no idea that it was James Earl Jones. It was an older movie, Great White Hope, where he plays, basically, it's sort of loosely based on Jack Johnson, the boxer, black guy that's beating everybody, and they're doing everything they can to stop him from winning the heavyweight title, basically. And so, fantastic movie. It made a very strong impact on me when I was a kid, and then later on, probably like 10 years later, I find out that was James Earl Jones, because he doesn't like now you go back and look, and you especially when he smiles, you can definitely tell it's him. But he's young and much thinner, and he's in very good shape for the movie and all of that. So it's fascinating to find out that was him.
Surprisingly, his only Oscar nomination was that movie.
Really?
He eventually, he didn't win that year, but eventually, I think in late 90s, they gave him like an honorary Oscar, so he does have an Oscar. But yeah, that's his only true Oscar-nominated role, because he was doing all these big blockbuster character movies, and so but yeah, great pick.
All All right, round 3.
And I'm going to go to the stage. We just talked about Oscars.
Very nice.
I'm going to go with his Tony performance from Fences last week. That's the first thing that I thought of. You know, I was still in the press box in Boone Pickens, you know, writing some stories, and you know, I went and watched some of his clips from that, you know, original role in 1985, August Wilson's Fences. Just a great performance, and such a heartbreaking performance. You know, he plays a guy that, you know, came from nothing, kind of stayed in nothing, and just a really, you know, gut-wrenching performance from him. I've never seen the full performance. You can't see that it was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But seeing scenes and just the legacy that you know, he did it, and then, you know, 25 years later, Denzel Washington, another great, reprised the role. So yeah, I'll go with his performance in Fences, the stage production. Very
nicely done. As the first theater-related pick in the history of the Cowboy Chronicles Stone Cloud Six-Pack. So we appreciate the bringing some culture to the show here. That makes my last pick very difficult. No, it's not that difficult. I'm gonna have to. There's one that's got to be picked. I don't want to have the Kevin Costner regret of last week's Kevin's draft. So I'll say before I make my pick that the other two that I was considering here, Coming to America, was another favorite movie of mine. I was a big fan of all of Eddie Murphy's movies when I was growing up, and he plays Eddie Murphy's dad, King Jaffe Jafar, in that movie. I thought he was hilarious in that role. And also one of the later things that he did, he made an appearance on The Big Bang Theory, where he ding dong ditches Carrie Fisher, which I just found this out this week. That was the first time they had ever met, because they were never. He was always in the studio. Yeah, he was in the voice studio. He was never on set for any of the Star Wars stuff, so they had actually never met. Which when he goes to Sheldon, he's like, "You like Star Wars, don't you?" And Sheldon's just like, "Yeah, exactly." So I consider both of those very heavily, but I feel like it would be bad to have this draft and not choose The Lion King. So it's got to be that one. And completely unrelated to the draft, I got sent, my girlfriend sent me a clip that has started circulating on social media, that where they had animated him doing some voice testing stuff with trying to roar. Yeah, it's been going around a lot lately since his passing. And I hadn't even told her what the draft was, and she sent it to me today. And that's just how much of an impact he has on society and culture. He's everywhere. You're not even telling her what you're doing, and he's still being sent videos and stuff. But yeah, Lion King, the 1994 one, the animated one, just I wasn't alive then, but I've heard it was very good. I've seen it a little bit. I've seen it a bunch. I've seen the Broadway show as well, and just I didn't love the one that came out in 2019, where he still revoiced Mufasa. Right. But yeah, just that, voice of God. I don't know if he ever played God, but just that's a mixture of him and Morgan Freeman. That's just what you picture when you think of that, and just a great voice performance by a great. Absolutely, just such a fun guy, such an entertaining guy, and just incredible. Sad that he's gone, but as you said, 93 years is a very good life. So, all right, with that, I think it's about time to wrap it up. As always, don't forget to go put your score predictions down in the comments. You can win a beer that we will drink for you next week on the show. And with that, McClain, thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you next time on the Cowboy Chronicles.